In the series of sharings about the hidden forces of life, today we are going to see those hidden forces which are around us. Someone very experienced in this field said that true enemies are never totally at sight. True enemies hide, and they are around us, hidden, invisible, and harassing us. And these enemies that we can learn how to know, to be able to know how to deal with them and not let ourselves be influenced. These enemies are strange suggestions that take place and that we confuse with our inner light. They are thoughts that are not ours and that we believe that they are ours. And these thoughts that are not ours, but which permeate us, that we are deluded, we get deluded and think that we created them, they always try to close our hearts. So a thought that closes our hearts, we should be careful with this. It could not be yours. Our lives in this hidden sense is very vulnerable. This is a very old process of many incarnations in which feelings, thoughts, actions were not ours, but they were influences or actions of these hidden forces. Now, these hidden forces do not always come as thoughts, as suggestions, but sometimes they come in the form of a discomfort, a malaise. So be very careful with discomfort. Some people are happy to have discomfort because this calls attention of everyone to themselves. So they feel well to be bad, to feel bad, because this calls attentions to them. Almost all malaises or discomforts are not ours. They are these influences. And if we begin to host this discomfort, if we begin to include this discomfort in our routine, if we accept a discomfort, they become hosts of our physical bodies. And then, if they are installed in the physical body, this discomfort begins to merge, it begins to go to the astral and mental planes. So be very careful with discomfort, because this is very simple to dissolve or send away a discomfort. We just need to firmly connect ourselves with our levels of feeling welfare, rather than confirming this force that is entering our bodies, because later on it will be installed and then we will feel permanently this discomfort. These forces that enter as thoughts, as feelings, as discomforts, these forces want to torture us because they have fun in torturing us when they are small. But when they are big forces, when they are very adult forces, they do not have fun. They want to kill us. And this is not a drama. I'm not dramatizing this. We are speaking of a certain degree of forces that want to kill us. These small forces that bring discomfort, that have fun from us, then we will see why they have fun and what they remove from us while they have fun. But within time, they will really want to kill us. And if we observed us, observe ourselves, we would be able to see this gradation, this degree. And if we see other people who are constantly suffering, we will also be able to see all of this. These forces, this sort of hidden force, is in practically all things of the world. You know that Christ called the prince of this world something similar. So these forces are very active in this world. They install themselves as they are assumed, as they are hosted, as we accept them. They begin to install themselves in a more stable way in our subconscious. And when they install themselves in the subconscious, they act from there. And from the subconscious level, they are attentive to perceive the moment they are supposed to act. Because they don't like to miss their target. They are very smart. So that happens in the caves of the subconscious, because you know that the subconscious is a sort of a well, and there are wells and there are caves there. And so they are there, these forces are there, waiting for an opportunity for them to emerge, and therefore to influence outside here. And these forces that install themselves in the subconscious, they are very dangerous for our lives, because they emerge suddenly, and you cannot always hold them. You cannot always control them, because from the caves of the subconsciousness, they are attentive and they will act when you are distracted. So we have to be careful with this. When we perceive this and we host them and we continue with them and we do nothing for them to come out, this is to say, when you assume a discomfort, you are always suffering with this, so you have assumed these forces, you have consented these forces to be in there. And there a second stage begins, a second stage of this action. When you assume it, when you accept it, when you are passive before this situation, you do nothing to expel these forces or to change them in some way if it's possible. It's not always possible to change them. Sometimes it is, but sometimes you have to expel it. And to expel it, we need to have will. Without will, we will become a stooge, we will become an instrument of these forces, a tool of these forces. Then in the stage after you host them, accept them, confirm them within yourself and do nothing for this to change, then they will begin to undermine your positive forces. And then those that were your qualities become undermined. And you could have many qualities that withdraw because these forces undermine them. They begin to send these qualities away or weaken these qualities. And within time, you will be prevented to carry out good actions. You can see how this evolves. Right? So maybe you want to do a good action and you cannot. You want, but you cannot. Because these forces are impeding you, preventing you. So it is, in these cases, it is not about a personal feeling or thought that is acting. Rather, in these cases, it is about a thought or a feeling that has been stalled. Now, this could also come from someone else. This could have taken place within someone else, and instead of acting in someone else, it begins to also act upon you. And then you need to be very careful so that you will not get involved with someone else, with no one. Because at the moment of involvement, this force will come from someone else and will enter you. When this comes from someone else, or when it comes from the environment, because there are these things also that are formed in the environment. Someone may have expelled a force like this from themselves. They simply expelled it. They didn't dissolve it. They expelled it. So this is in the environment circulating. And this could come over you. This could permeate you. And then you will act, think, or feel without being yourself. This force entered, it thought through you, it felt within you, and it belongs to someone else. It came from someone else. And innocent, unprepared, you take this as something of yours. And inadvertently, you could assume a thought that is not yours. It came from the space, from the collective space. It was there, and you begin to think in that way, or you begin to feel in that way, and do things according to that way. If we consider something like this as an idea that came through our mind and just that, but it's not just that, because this does not belong to you. You must recognize that this is not yours. This came from someone else. You embraced this, you adopted this, but it's not at the level of your point of perception or consciousness. It came from someone else and installed itself. And installed itself due to any reason that you may have given to absorb the force of someone. You may have, for example, a sentimentalist attitude towards someone. This is an open door for someone else's force to enter you. And if it's a mental force, you will think like them. If it's an emotional force, you will feel like them. If it is an etheric force, you will do even gestures like they do. Even movements in the way someone else does. So we would have to be very much prepared for these suggestions. These are suggestions. Sometimes they are mental suggestions. They are very firm, clear, very logic. That you need to have a lot of decision to see clearly, to feel clearly, to perceive clearly. Then you need to be attentive, not to assume something suddenly without having time to know that this belongs to you, that this idea belongs to you, that that suggestion belongs to you, that you didn't adopted this from someone else who eventually does not have the same openness of consciousness you have for certain things. So it is as if these suggestions that come and you adopt, it is a little bit like the work of the hypnotist. A hypnotist who says, sleep, and you sleep, isn't it? So they come and meet something like this and you follow it as if you were hypnotized. So we really have to be very attentive. You have to be very attentive, and we have to be very agile. Very agile. Agile. We don't need to be obsessed by this work. We just have to be attentive to see if what comes is yours, or if it comes from someone else, or this astral mental, collective mental astral that is there. Normally forces of illness, because as humanity is sick and there are many sick, forces, the forces of illnesses is in the air. Do you understand? We have to be very careful so as not to absorb these forces of illness. They are in the air. It's not your sick body. It's not yourself sick. You absorbed a force of illness. This exists. And this force of illness, for example, generally it comes as a wave into your body, and you can even feel this. The body, for example, feels that wave, and the mind says, I have a cold. Do you understand how the mind enters this? The body felt the shivers, and the mind says, I have a cold. That's it. You really get a cold. Because the body allowed it to enter and the mind confirmed it without thinking, without reflecting, without assuming at that moment that we are whole, that we are healthy, that we are perfect, generally. The same happens with a force circulating. You assume this and you begin to cough, you begin to sneeze, you don't have a cold. You just assumed this and you begin to sneeze because you assume this. You allow this to enter. And you believe that you have a cold. You have all the symptoms of having a cold. You have all the symptoms that you have a flu. Now, this force, if it installs itself through the physical body, that its tendency is to enter the emotional body, the astral body, and the mental body. And when it reaches the mind begins to say, I'm weak, I'm ill, I'm not feeling well. How many people say gratuitously, I'm not feeling well? The bodies assume this, and you begin to say, I'm not feeling well. Why aren't you feeling well? Sometimes the individual cannot even say they are just not feeling well. That is to say, they are just stooge of these forces, a puppet of these forces. So we have to make a difference between that which is the real will of beings and those that are the little wills of beings. You have to see the difference between them to be able to deal with these things. The wills, you hear that people are filled of desires, full of wills. And you're going to if you collaborate with this, you're going to help to kill them, because they have so many wills. They have to eliminate this, because we only have one will. Those who are filled with wills are filled with forces, because in the being there is only one will. There is only one will. There are not more. And from that will, the whole energy comes for you to be, to act, for you to think and feel. But you have to go and look for that will. There are not many. Our wills or our desires, when they are many, they are all movements of our bodies. Movements in our bodies that come from this invisible thing, this thing that is not invisible. If you have many wills, you are filled with hidden forces of these invisible ones who gradually install themselves, because we only have one will, and it is reflected with the same quality in all the sectors of life, but there is only one. We have to be attentive with this, very attentive, because otherwise we will live a totally artificial life, a life that is not ours, a life that is a mixture of the movements of these forces, which are not visible. These forces are not visible. And this comes from an invisible consciousness that sometimes is in the air, like we have seen, and sometimes they are a force that come from an entity that is not visible, you cannot see. It comes from an invisible being that you are not seeing. All of this could be resolved if you accepted that you have only one will, that will is within you at the most profound level, and as it is only one, there is no way to confuse this with other wills. Other wills is a sort of banana tree that is oscillating with the wind. This is not you. This is not yours. The one will comes from our real being. It comes from within us. It is one. And it can be placed, it can be adjusted at different degrees for whatever you need. Naturally, you won't use your real will to drink a glass of water. You can adjust this real will, you can observe this real will, and get the glass without breaking it, because if we really use the force of your real will, you will break everything because it's very strong. So you need to learn how to deal with this also, to deal with this will. What we call will is that which comes from inside. It's not what comes from the bodies. The physical body is filled with wills, the emotional, astral, not to speak. The emotional is also filled with wills, and nothing of this is ourselves. For example, feeling like or having a will to see someone, this is not ours. Feeling like eating something, this is not ours. Feeling like thinking about something that distracts me, this is not ours. So we need an exercise. It's necessary to dedicate to this, because there is no will to eat something. It needs what you need. What exists is what you need to eat, not feeling like eating something. You see the difference? Of course, the physical body needs to eat, so you leave all the wills aside, and you're going to ask what you really need to eat. And this is what we call will. All the rest are movements of these forces that could be well installed within your bodies, well installed in the physical, the etherical physical, the emotional astral, and in the mental body. We do not realize that these forces have come from outside and that they do not belong from us. At the beginning, we don't realize about this. We don't have the practice of observing this. And from our first incarnation, we have been a group of puppets in the hands of these forces. I'm speaking very clear terms, which could not adjust totally to all cases. But if we don't have the will to see them clearly, to perceive them clearly, they will have a great skill to delude us, to deceive us, and also deceive our bodies, which at this point could be completely addicted or viced or addicted to all these forces. These external influences belong to different sorts, different degrees, and as we accept them, they will approach in greater degrees, stronger degrees, and at the end, we could be assuming a force of an elevated degree because we assume smaller ones. We don't realize what we were assuming. We did not realize what we were doing. And these external influences could be considered from the psychological standpoint, as well as the mechanical standpoint. This is also a mechanic. This is not only psychology. This sometimes it's just mechanical, and you just have to go against it and it will break. But you need to find the means to gradually do this. But you need to have the will, the inner will that will help you. And you need to admit that you are not living your life. You are living movements of forces, not your life. And this, in the sentimental plane, this is very common. You could be in contact with someone, they will place you an astral thought, they will place you a sentence that was said from the astral plane, and you could just be imbued of this because you are leveled with it. Then you will begin a dialogue with a fellow being. All of this could not be you. In rare moments, in just a few people, the real will of a being is expressed in a stable way. This is very rare. And in rare moments also, it's not mixed with these things that we shelter in our intermediary levels. These countless wills that we collect and assume or let ourselves be influenced by them. Now we need to consider that these things could take place without our realizing about them for a reason. Our etheric body, everyone knows what the etheric body is, right? A very subtle part of the physical body that goes much beyond the physical. There are etheric bodies that reach even a certain distance, and in these cases, these external wills, whether of people or movements of forces, enter through the etheric, and you do not realize it. You do not realize it in your mind, you do not realize it in your feeling, and you do not realize it in the physical, because it enters through the periphery of the etheric. And then it permeates, and when it enters the etheric body is used to it, and when it's very close to the physical level, the etheric is used to this, and if there is no idea of the mind that has to be attentive to all of this, the physical body adopts or embraces this force that entered through the etheric from far away. So we really need to be attentive if we want to be ourselves on this body level. This subtle physical is constituted with very active vibrations which enter in contact with active vibrations of etheric bodies of others. Because as the etheric bodies expand, they are very much in contact with one another. At this moment, for example, at this room, all your etherics are in contact, all of them. And if you are not centered, if you are not focused at the point of consciousness that you have chosen, when you stand up from here, you are not yourselves. It's a mixture of all the etheric bodies that were here. When there is a work in the etheric body, everyone can enjoy or use this. But if among yourselves there is people who are not doing the work, people who are distracted, thinking of other things, acting mentally by themselves, who are not here gathered, you are absorbing this from them, because the etherics are very much united. They are very much intertwined. So we do not only have an etheric responsibility when we are close to someone, but we also have to have an etheric consciousness. We have to be aware of this to know how to not let yourself be invaded. Of course, there are moments that it could be very evolutionary to have contact with the etheric body of someone else. This could be very evolutionary, but this has to be selected, consented, since as long as you have recognized that this is a benefit. There should be no selfishness in this, or vampirism, vampire, to be a vampire, to come close to someone and begin to be a vampire because you know that this will be a benefit to you. I don't know if this is a benefit, because in some way, in the law of karma, you will have to give this back. You see, when we are adults, when we become adults in consciousness, we have to know these things. We have to come to know this. Otherwise, in the childhood of our, or the teenaging of our consciousness, we go through lives without being ourselves. And you can imagine what this is in the law of karma, this whole mixture in the law of karma, because the law of karma is also in the material levels. We could have a thought. We could have a thought, and we do not manage to keep this thought very much united. This thought is going to be strengthened because you are thinking, and it will gain forces, it will increase. And on the mental plane, the plane of the thoughts, it could be in contact. If you didn't take care of it, and it will be in contact with the thought of someone else. And it could be in contact with a thought that represents an entity, because there are many released thoughts that become an entity. There is no one thinking there, it's just a thought that became an entity. And with this released thought, you could get close to this entity, and this thought could permeate you. We are in a game of thoughts that is infinite, an infinite mixture of thoughts. So this work is a work that deals with hidden things, and we have to learn to also work in a hidden way. Because if we don't work in a hidden way, this could be the same as being challenging one of these forces. Because many forces are nourished of being in you. They proceed, they expand, they live. Living of things they absorb from you. So you really need to be very attentive. What we call ourselves in our current state of consciousness are generally not ourselves. What we call ourselves is this mixture. This mixture is what we call ourselves. So we really need to do a work of will, but we need to look for this will in there. The will of the personality is not enough. You need to look for this will in there, inside of yourself. And you need this will to begin to transmute your small wills, and then you will begin to do a more conscious work. This that we call ourselves, of course, are not ourselves. What we call ourselves was the education we received, what we received from our parents, the heredity for law, the ideas that they placed in our minds when we were in school, the things we read in other people's books. This is what we call ourselves. Nothing of this is ourselves. So even if you are reading a positive book, you need to be attentive to see if this has affinity with your will, your inner will, your true will and real will. Otherwise, this is going to transform you. This is going to manipulate that which you are. Haven't you heard that people are influenced by things? They read a book and are influenced. They listen to a song and they are influenced. This is lack of self-governance. This is lack of attention for everything that may have been happening. And sometimes all of this happens not in the mental mind. The mental mind may be in a certain position, but the astral body also has a mind. And the physical body also has a mind. It's not the mental mind through which you are thinking. There is a substance, a mental substance in the astral body that thinks. You do not realize, but it thinks within your astral body. And it's not your mind that thinks. It's the mental substance that is also mixed with the astral body, because the bodies have an interaction. So even the physical body has a mental substance. It's not a mind that reasons like your mental body reasons, but it is that a mental substance which is also in the physical body, that is also being part of the group of your physical body, in such a way that your physical body also thinks. If we don't have a consciousness that we have to think according to our will, rather than according to the different wills of the bodies, if we don't have this awareness, we won't realize these things. We won't realize these things, and we will be completely susceptible to these forces. Oftentimes, what is thinking in our physical body, if this is not accepted or if this is assimilated, it begins to emerge and enter the astral body in a form of suggestion. And the suggestion that enters through your astral body from the physical body is not a suggestion that comes from above. It is a suggestion that practically comes from outside, because it may have entered your physical body even when you clap, when you give your hand to someone else, or when you hug someone. This enters through your physical body, is installed in your physical body, and through its capacity of thinking, it begins to think in your physical body. It emanates, it enters your astral body, and you will think according to that embrace, that hug that you gave. Has nothing to do with the hug, but the vibratory quality, this thing that you assumed and entered your astral body. And in your astral body, it could be nourished or not. And it could also be resolved within your astral body, depending on the work you have trained with these bodies. So something could enter through your physical, permeate your astral body, and in the astral you will feel it. So it's important for you to work there because it doesn't need to go up to the mental, because if it goes to the mental, it will be a little bit more complicated. So you have to be attentive on all levels, not only with what we think, which is fundamental, but also with what we feel, what we perceive as feeling, what we perceive as vibration of feeling. And we have to be also attentive to what is permeating through our etheric physical body, because it seems to be something very innocent. It enters the etheric physic, it stays there. It doesn't stay there. It goes up to the astral and then the mental. It seems like nothing was happening, but observe and you will see. Most of the time, these suggestions enter, and if we are aware of this, we will train ourselves. That is, we could receive a force like this, And maybe for you to learn something, for you to be experienced, you could even let it enter, for you to learn how to deal with this, for you to see how far it goes, for you to see what you can do to deal with this, so that you don't, but you should not exaggerate in this will of learning. This has to be very conscious. You could even coexist with this to see how it is, to see how you can deal with this, what you can do either to dissolve it or to expel it or transmute it, transform it. Because certain things that surround us and permeate us, or which try to permeate us, if we are aware of this process, many things that come to be destructive, we could not be welcoming them, but we could be receiving them in the sense of service. And we could even transform something like this. But then we need to have an experience to gradually receive this, to not go over the limit and perceive that within yourself there is the strength to dominate, to control, to... That is, we should be more attentive with all of this, so that we may really do our work, and eventually even render a service to this world of forces where everything is really mixed. And these suggestions that come to us are very vast. And through old habits, through our education, through things that also come from previous lives, we receive these things naturally. We receive them naturally. You know that Saint John of the Cross was a specialist in all of this. He was a specialist. So Saint John of the Cross used to say that you should always be against. You should yourself always say no to these things, not to positive things. If you want to learn how to deal spiritually with hidden forces, read Saint John of the Cross, because everything is there. We can even hear sentences of Saint John of the Cross and we will see what it is about. Now, oftentimes the suggestions come from the collective. So these forces gathered and they formed a collectivity of forces, and this collectivity of forces influences in the collective level. You see, when all women begin to cut their hair, when all men begin to do the same thing, this is the collective that permeates. We are not saying that you should or not cut your hair. We are just speaking of the collective influence that is not ours, that has nothing to do with our way of using our hair, has nothing to do with our way of dressing, that has nothing to do with our way of walking. This comes from the collective. And you enter this and you begin to be collective in this sense. Collective is not groupal, as we know. Well, when we are born on earth, when we incarnate on earth, let us not think that these things began now. This began when you were incarnating. Because when you incarnate in the country, a nation. You incarnate in a social environment. So you incarnate. So if you are incarnating that nation, this nation has an aura. And you are incarnating, you are entering that aura. So when you have just incarnated, you are just acting within a certain aura. So you, in that stage, you are acting as everyone acts in that aura. Haven't you heard that in some countries have certain costumes that are different from others? This is the aura of the nation, and those who incarnate there have this. So today you incarnated here in this nation, you entered this aura. As you develop, you will have the habits of this aura. If tomorrow you incarnate in Germany, you will see that you have the habits of Germany. Nothing of these are ours. None of these things are ourselves. It doesn't need to be ours because a nation is something else. It's not those habits that exist on the physical, emotional, and mental planes. The nation has an aura that not has a soul that not even those who are born there know what it is. So you have to be attentive, connected with our inner worlds, asking for much light, being passive before desires, before wills, before preferences. While we are young, this is to say, while our bodies are growing up in the first years, we don't realize about none of this. After you acquire a certain experience, after the consciousness of the soul is completely within the body, after you have the possibility to find yourself, regardless of the family you were born, regardless of who is your body, who is your mother, regardless of which country you were born in, regardless of all of this, you have conditions to perceive that you are nothing of this, nothing. Now, while we are children, we cannot have this clarity. We can't have this clarity, so we incorporate, we develop based on all these characteristics that are not the souls, that which do not belong that individual. So we should deal with these things with attention and mainly with respect for someone else's aura, which is very sensitive, which is very inclusive for their own nature. And mainly when we are dealing with children, because we could form a child that has nothing to do with themselves, that has nothing to do with that soul. And even if you do a quick examination of consciousness exam, if you do a quick consciousness exam, you will see many things that enter your physical, emotional, astral formation that have nothing to do with the consciousness you have today. The consciousness that gradually woke up, that has gradually waken up and is now manifesting itself in you. So for all of this, it's not enough to observe, but you have to have a decision, a will to transform yourself. You have to have transformation as a foundation, because if you don't have your transformation as a foundation, if you don't have the willingness that whatever you perceive, if it is not in accordance with your current consciousness are not tastes, will. It's something that is more inside, and each one knows what it is, because at the right moment and every time it can, it emerges. There aren't beings who are totally unconscious constantly. When the consciousness can, it emerges. So it comes and you say, this is my consciousness. And everything that we absorb without realizing, this gradually creates a habit, this gradually permeates, this forms the vitality of bodies, not only the physical body, and it ends up that we are here living something that really has nothing to do. The first step in this, even if it's enthusiast, it could not take too long, last too long. it could not last too long because there are many forces playing and many old archaic habits that are very installed and being very settled. They do not want to come out, to be unsettled. But then you have to be patient when you find something like this, because without patience, there is a whole part of your bodies that refuses to continue. And patience does not come from the bodies. Patience comes from a different level. It comes from your consciousness. And let us prepare ourselves to have a lot of patience with ourselves. A lot of patience. But a patience that will cause you to perceive all of this and say, well, patiently, I will take care of all of this. Oftentimes, without attacking this, without challenging this, but speaking this very softly, very silently, to that level of yours that could not suscitate contrary energy. So when we decide to do something like this, when you decide to work on your hidden forces, you need to be very discreet, and be careful to not let these forces understand that you are working on them. Unless you have a ray that is very settled, that could face all of this. Of course, the work will then be quicker, simpler, less complex, and you won't spend so much time with these things. But many times our rays are not yet very defined in their actions, processes. Our rays are not manifesting themselves very clearly, so we need to collaborate with them also, right? I can know that I have the will, but when I see that this will won't be good to move something, I need to collaborate with my will, and I need to look for other systems to help my will. We also have to collaborate with this, because the will could not be totally active. It could be not totally or settled. It could be not totally seeing very clearly, but it is there. The consciousness is in contact not only with negative things, but also with many positive things, even perfect things from our standpoint. So the consciousness could be in contact with some other conscious material from above, and the consciousness gradually learns how to deal with all of this. But if the consciousness contacts something higher, it could be a being, an entity, a hierarchy, an idea that is there as a form. So this consciousness, if this consciousness contacts this, then you can consciously perceive it. Then you assume the work with your consciousness. You assume the work with your consciousness. Do not fail to assume your consciousness, because the consciousness arrives first before the bodies. And you need to assume your consciousness. There you need to assume this, because then we will work in group. And the consciousness, in contact with a greater consciousness, will gather many forces. It will gather many forces and will cause these forces to flow and regenerate if they have to regenerate all of this. We live surrounded with people, and these people who surround us, every human being who surrounds us, are not only etheric bodies, But all these creatures who surround us have desires, aspirations, and they have absurd aspirations, which is very good for them because they don't have other sort of aspiration, and they will use this until they receive their lessons. So as people, in the middle of people, we are in contact with all of this, and we are receiving impulses of all sorts. So even respecting that which is someone else's process, even recognizing and respecting the point of relationship they have with these forces or energies or their own consciousness, even respecting all of this, you have to be careful. To be careful and know how to discern. And when you do not know how to discern, put yourself in a neutral attitude, a very impersonal attitude, and ask your inner will to illuminate you, to define you, or to do something clear for you to be able to understand. We have to be always in this dialogue with our inner world. We have to be always in this conversation, in this contact. And this inner will oftentimes leads us to go through learning experience, but then it comes from this will. It doesn't come from lack of care. It doesn't come from lack of attention to these forces. It came because that will wants you to learn in a certain way. So even if you ask for light, this will, which does not make a mistake, thinks you have to learn in a different way. You have to learn by having tests, by having experiences, and this could happen. All of this mixes has influences in all different ways, and we have to be, before everything, being awake. Being awake with principle. The principle that we have this inner will, we have this inner light, and then we don't need to fear anything. We don't need to fear anything, because if something happens which was not in your proposal, it's a sign that you had to learn this. There is never a problem. The only problem is that you are around, sleeping, walking without being a consciousness of all of this, because when you see you at a point that has no return in this unconsciousness before these forces. And of course, there are beings, entities, forces of different sorts, which are mixed in the collective astral, the collective etheric, physical. There is a great mixture. All of this is very much in need to be able to remain on the level where it is in need of your forces, of your particles. So they begin to harass you. These forces enter from every side, sometimes even when you are sleeping, and these forces begin to harass you, to develop in you certain things that are against your consciousness, not for you to be in a different situation, but because these forces need to nourish themselves of that which you are going to develop. And if you develop luminous things and positive things, this does not nourish them. They need you to develop these particles, these materials, etheric, astral, and mental materials that they need to nourish themselves, that they need to survive. So many appetites come because these forces aspire to everything they need, and you think you are hungry. So then we really need to be always attentive. If these forces do not manage to aspire for that which they want, then they can produce in you, for example, a movement of rage. A movement of rage does not always mean that you have rage, really. A movement of rage means that those forces could not aspire something. They produced this, and during your attack of rage attack, they will form certain particles that they need to be nourished. Do you understand? And this is also found in violence when we see in the ABC of St. John of the Cross, in passion and desire. So that which is desire outside, that which is passion outside, that which is rage outside, that which is violence outside.